Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 4. This is Hope, and it's focused on the ambassadors, which is us. I actually wanted to call this the citizens, I think, and I was telling Byron about like my vision and what I was going to do, and I was like, yeah, and so I'm going to call this chapter this, and then also I said, yeah, and then the last chapter is about us. And he just goes, oh, the ambassadors. And I was like, oh, shoot, that's way better than what I was going to call it. Because it makes way more sense, because we are God's representatives here. So today is Luke 2:30 through 35, and it's the New Living Translation. I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, and he is the glory of your people Israel. Jesus' parents were amazed at what was being said about him. Then Simeon blessed them, and he said to Mary, the baby's mother, "This child is destined to cause many in Israel to fall and many others to rise. He has been sent as a sign from God, but many will oppose him. As a result, the deepest thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your very soul." I love how Luke explains to us that Mary is the baby's mother.
Oh, yeah.
Like he said to Mary, the baby's mother.
Yeah.
Like, just in case you weren't sure who Mary was.
And this whole scene is such a good scene because Simeon's was a person that was like on the lookout for God.
Right.
I mean, he was on the
Messiah.
lookout for the Messiah, and he was promised that he would see him before he died.
Yeah.
But he somehow saw Mary and Joseph and that child. And even though they weren't, like, as we've been discussing, like grand, they obviously were from like a lowly part of society. Like, he was like, this is it. Like, he had the eyes to see because he was like, he knew or had the discernment probably given to him by the Spirit.
Well, doesn't it? Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it said, I know it says about, isn't Hannah who also comes along? And Hannah was led by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if it says that Simeon was led by the Holy Spirit as well.
Right.
Or that it was revealed to him through the Spirit.
But I just like the idea of what...
So you guys can look that up.
Yeah.
And Luke, read the verses before and after.
But I like the idea of maybe like how many people saw them entering that day. And it could have just been like a mundane family.
Oh, right.
Like, I like the idea of like what the world would think to be mundane is actually like highly honored, highly favored woman. This is the son. This is the Messiah. This boy, this child. And then the foreshadowing, this prophecy that he then goes on to say after, he blesses them saying, the child is destined to cause many in Israel to fall and many others to rise. He has been sent as a sign from God, but many will oppose him. As a result, the deepest thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your very soul. And it just makes me think of how he's described as this, like the stumbling block. And the people that think that they're like highly intelligent and like, I'm going to sort it all out.
Right.
It's like Jesus is a stumbling block for those that think that they know what the world's all about, because he's like, no, I'm going to take your entire concept of how we should live and I'm going to flip it upside down. And I'm going to say that you're going to die to yourself and live
That's
for
a really
others. Interesting
concept. Like the upside down kingdom. That would be crazy if someone thought of that.
Yeah,
that would
totally.
be interesting.
But it all, I mean, you did such a good job catching that, and using these verses to show that, but he really is.
Right, but because it is. I mean, when I am praying about and meditating on, a lot of times this stuff comes to me through another source. Like I'm reading something or doing a devotional or reading the Bible or something, and I'll read one phrase or a sentence, or just maybe in a whole chapter where it's like this concept, and then all of a sudden my mind just goes to all these places, because Jesus does ask us to live in such a different way than what society tells us to live, and even what like our own hearts desire to live in or do. I was talking to the kids at youth group, and I think because we were talking about Jonah, and we were talking about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying, I was talking about when I was in the car. I'm sure none of you guys do this at all, but sometimes I would be driving. And it was, when I was a teenager, honestly, I didn't care that much. I was pretty just like, whatever. But especially when I was pregnant with our first child, I would get really mad at other cars for not being safe because I was like, I have a baby, and I was really mad about it. And so, of course, if they did something dangerous, I would think to myself in a very Christian way, I hope they get in a car accident.
Oh my gosh.
So good. And I'm thinking this in my head.
Yeah.
Maybe I said it out loud, but I'm in the car by myself. So no one hears or sees this, but God does. Yeah. And I started to feel convicted basically because it's like, even if that person survived, I mean, they're still going to have hurt. I mean, there are costs, insurance, the car, whatever it is. And so then I started to say, I hope they get seen by a police officer because they were in fact being unsafe or breaking the law, and then they can be corrected in an appropriate way.
Right.
And so I was telling that, and all the girls were like laughing, but then they were all talking about, even that's like one example, but there's so many times where, something happens to someone that we don't like. Yeah. And of course, the first thought in your head is like, oh, like good, or like they deserve it. You know what I mean? Like it's so easy to like go there. But I think that that's like, that last verse, like the deepest thoughts of many hearts will be revealed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where like the stumbling block of coming with like the conviction of the Holy Spirit, or you're like reading the Bible and you're like, ooh, that's for me, and this is something I need to work on.
Right.
And then oftentimes it's like, okay, well, who's going to win here? And it's like, I have to submit. Like, I have to
Well,
lose.
you don't have to submit,
no,
but if you don't submit,
it won't be good.
Yeah,
it won't be good. Well. And like, so like to like take on where I'm like, okay, like God, like allowing God to win in this part of my life and giving up, like allowing this conviction to take its course by changing and modifying my behavior, so that like I am now more submitting to His will. More, like it's just that continual practice of submitting to His will. And like when we come across these stumbling blocks or these things where like Christ is saying this is where we need to be at, and it's like, ooh, but that's a little far. And He's like,
that's a little much.
That's a little like, do I really have to like? And it's like, yes, even that come, and it's easy. Like take on my way of thinking, take on my thing.
I think too, like going back to the thing with the car, like how often do we get so mad over such dumb things, like with driving, where it's like someone doesn't go at the light fast enough, or maybe it is someone's being unsafe, or maybe they're speeding by, or they're going too slow, or whatever is happening that it's not suiting you somehow. Like if we actually aren't wishing bad things on those people, and B, like we're not getting angry because we trust God to handle all justice in the end, it actually helps us be more relaxed and enjoy our ride more.
Yeah.
Like maybe you think to yourself, I'm going to stay away from that car because they're not being safe or something. But when we choose to submit those things, and especially something like that's something that you struggle with, like there's so many things that, we all have those areas of weak points. And when we actually submit that to God, and most likely it's going to be something you have to submit over and over again, because when we are really struggling with something, like you're not going to be able to just,
flip a switch.
Yeah, just be like, oh, and now I'm done with that thing. I mean, I think that there are some like miraculous healings and things like that, but I think generally speaking, it's a day in and day out discipline of saying like, no, I'm going to submit that to God. But in the end, like what you were saying, like it's easy. It's not easy to choose to do that, but your life becomes better and you become better because of it.
Yes.
So it's like the couple of questions I ask here is, are you fully submitting to Christ in your heart? And one of the reasons I ask that is I think it can be easier to outwardly submit than to inwardly submit. Like how many times at work, or maybe even with your spouse, or your family that you like submit, like you do what they asked, but in your heart the whole time you're like, you know, like, well, next time I'm not going to help them, or I'm not going to do like, you know what I mean? Like you're not submitting in your heart.
Right.
But then how often are we carrying that over where we're reading the Bible, or we feel convicted by the Spirit, or we know we shouldn't do something, and so we don't verbally say it. Like maybe in a conversation with someone, you don't verbally say, oh, you know, I'm glad that bad thing happened to that person, but you feel a little bit of joy, or you think something in your head. And that's a huge difference with Jesus.
Yeah.
Like that was the biggest thing that he was going after, was like, what is in your heart?
Yes.
What is your intention? Because this is so much more than an outward ritual.
Yeah.
And that's what he wanted, like from us. And the beauty of that though is when we submit in our hearts and we submit in our souls, like when we truly do that, we actually start to see those changes that we want to see, and we become better people. And I think that's sometimes where that ease comes from, is like we actually, like this is where, you know, iron sharpens iron. Like this is where we actually start to grow and become better.
Yeah.
Because I know that's referencing Christian relationships, but like the Holy Spirit can be that iron too, you know, through that internal correction.
Yeah. And then once you have that, it's like it'll eventually be pouring out of you.
Right, right. And then once you have figured that out, then he'll move on to the next thing you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
So great.
So on that note.
Yeah. Okay, so discussion, everything should be in the comments if you're on YouTube watching this. Otherwise, if you are watching from the website, if you go to YouTube, you can find it, or you can view the PDF at thirsttobeair.com/Advent. See you guys later.